Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of my reaction series to Attack on Titan's final season, part 2. Last week, we did a reaction to episode 1, which was quite a good premiere episode, primarily action-fueled, but with some nice bits of character moments sprinkled throughout, some nice substance, and some nice little bits of story meat to keep us tiding over throughout the episode, along with the action in Shiganshina that was happening, sort of overlying everything. And then there was a brilliant opening scene involving Zeke and the mysteries of what's going on with him in that Paths realm, how he was resurrected, who that girl is. That scene just brought a lot of nice intrigue and plot mysteries to sort of grab us and hook us back into this season once more. It was also the introduction to the amazing ED and the really good OP as well, and I sort of analyzed and tried to dissect that as best I could in the previous discussion, so we talked about that too. Aside from that, I don't really want to have much of a long preamble, just kind of want to jump right in. But before I do, just a couple of reminders. Obviously, this is just the reaction to episode 2, but if you finish and you want to check out my reaction to episodes 3 and even 4, there's even double early access, you can head over onto my Patreon, and those reactions will be available for you if you donate to the $5 tier for early access for one episode, $20 for early access, double early access, so for 2 episodes, and then $10 for full-length reactions. Just a little something extra if anyone's interested. And one last thing, just so you guys know, I do live stream discussions about each Attack on Titan episode the morning after it airs. So every Monday morning around between 9 and 9:30 a.m. Eastern, I will be heading over onto my Twitch channel and discussing the episode. There will probably be a little bit of rehashes of some of the points I make in these discussions, but if you want to interact with me and talk with me and share your opinions on the episode, you can join in those stream discussions. I've had one so far, and it was a lot of fun, and hopefully that'll continue for the rest of the series, for the rest of this season. And yeah, you're welcome to join in. Again, that's on my Twitch page, which is available in the description and in the pinned comment, so you can follow me over there, and we can discuss these things Monday mornings. That's about all I wanted to say. Thank you very much again for joining me. I don't take it for granted that you, the viewer, are watching what is not a blind reaction to this story content, even if it's a blind reaction to the episode. And yeah, I feel lucky that you want to share this experience with me, even if I know what's going to happen. And I'm glad that you see value in my reactions and discussions, even if we're talking about things I already know happen in these reactions. Anyway, this is far too long. Let's just dive right into the episode. Very excited.
訓練兵の時から奴は危険だと言ってきた。エレンはみんなを地獄に導くクソ野郎で。
He has.
そんなクソ野郎を俺は妬んだ。かっこよかったから。死ぬほどムカつくことだが、俺はまだ奴に死んでほしくねえ。
Great little Jean moment too.
ああ、このまま死なれたら。あいつをぶん殴れねえしな。
エレンが真意を隠しているとして私たちを突き放すのはどうしてなの？私のことが嫌いってなんでそんなことエレンは言うの？
それは
Definitely haven't heard this song before.
まあ向こうにいる敵全部殺せば
I love it though.
俺たち自由になれるのか。
Wow.
まさかエレンも僕も昔から知ってた。嘘をもっともらしくするために利用した。
Possibly.
無理やりついた嘘だからね。
Oh, I really like this track. I haven't heard it before, but really, it's very sweeping. Great how they integrate these sequences together with the music. They're recapping this too, but different tone to it to start because of this, how they structured it in the music. Again, Reiner's empathy, his understanding. Chills.
Eren, 俺はもう終わりにしたい。俺とお前のどこが同じなんだ。もういいだろう。
You are though. Beast Titan theme.
来たか驚異の子。
ちょっと遅れたがよく一人で耐えたなエレン。あとはお兄ちゃんに任せろ。
Great illustrations again. That was quite an extended introduction and quite a lot of recap, but I was okay with it because it showed all of it in a sort of a different tone, in large part due to that new song. Really great start to the episode. He's personally betrayed by this. God.
南にある撤退時の飛行船まで行くんだ。
いいや、私も行く。私はファルコを巻き込んだ。挙句何度も助けられた。
I really like this development for Gabby. Taking responsibility, being more self-aware, gaining perspective. She's learned a lot in a short amount of time, and she slowly started to change.
君を助けに来たのかもな。
Niall.
だが、君の帰りを待つ家族はいるんだろう。この気を逃したら一生帰れないぞ。俺はもう妻や娘には会えないだろう。ジークが一言叫ぶだけで化け物になる。
Horrifying. Can't even imagine.
伝えたいことがまだまだあったのにな。
そうですかか。
コニーが熊の相手をした。
ピクシー司令、ご無事で。
まだまだボケてはおらんぞ。ただ少々飲みすぎてしもうての。
Can't imagine what they must be feeling knowing what's inside them.
皆の者、
Any moment.
ここにある立
It
体
could
起動
happen.
装置には
また同じ志を持ってあなたと一緒に
The
戦える
same
なん
goal?
て。
Not sure about that, Luis.
そうそのマフラー置いていくんですか？
Oh,
置いていく。
great moment. A point of divergence for Mikasa. Love the shot. Pure ecstasy.
志願しなけのもんか。塞がれた。
ジークが船を落としました。
Ooh. That's a cool shot.
歴史が変わる瞬間は
The moment she's been waiting
もう間
for
もなくです。
forever. The one she talked to Pixis about. Oh my god, is that already halfway?
今助けを必要としているのはライナーの方かな。
What do we actually do here?
残念だけど仕方がない。二人の接触を支援しよう。
Oh my god.
エレンとジークを助けてください。
That was more intense than in the manga. I didn't think that was possible.
飛行船が。
どうした？まずい。見つかった。
兄です。
そうか。俺はこの捕虜を民家に拘束してくる。
俺たちは先に行くぞ。遅れるなよ。
待って。
子供が来る場所じゃない。家に帰るんだ。
Hugely admirable thing Niall does there.
ナイルさん、
It takes
ありがとう。
a lot to be able to do something like that in a moment like this.
ガビ、どうして敵を信じたんだ？
いや、
It came naturally.
ニアとレンも逃げ出せたんかね。
あん二人なら大丈夫やろ。たくましいなき。
許せない。どうしてお姉ちゃんを殺したやつのことなんか心配するの？私は殺してやりたい。
So many conflicting feelings in this moment for Gabby, but everything conducive to her growth as a person. This is quite beautiful.
悪魔なんていなかった。この島には人がいるだけ。やっとライナーの気持ちが分かった。
This is hitting me quite a bit.
私たちは見たわけでもない人たちを一方的に悪魔だと決めつけて、ずっと同じことを繰り返してる。ごめんね、ファルコ。
Opened cage.
病院の少尉軍人がエレン・イェーガーだと知らずに手紙を区外のポストから彼の仲間に送り続けて、ウドと
All
ソ
of
フ
these
ィアも俺の
cages.
せいで死んだ。
Self-imposed cages, confines.
お前が好きだ。お前に鎧の巨人を継承してほしくないから戦士候補生になった。俺と結婚してずっと幸せでいるためにお前に長生きしてほしかった。
Why not, right?
何言ってんの？
Cute.
俺は巨人になっちまうかもしれないから、もう言い残すことはね。
How can you not wish the best for these two?
行こう。お前が脊髄液を飲んだことをジークさんが知れば。
Completely dismantling his former comrades in arms.
もうすぐだ。
How much conviction?
あともう少しで俺たちの夢が叶う。車力の巨人、そんなところでやられたのか、ピークちゃん。
ようやく追いついたと思ったんだが、誰が仕留めた？お前らがやったんだ。
一発限りの騙し討ちですよ。マガト元帥。
Oh. Oh, great shot. Oh. I love how they presented all that.
やはりか、エレン。この世で一番それを思っちゃいけねえのはエレン、お前だ。奴に少しでも命があるなら叫ぶはずだ。
I can't believe that was 22 minutes. Holy shit. These episodes go by so damn quickly. Wow. I like that one better than the first one, I think. I think it was a little bit better in terms of the ramping tension and a little bit more of a lyrical flow to things. Slightly more interesting visual storytelling apart from the Zeke scene in the first episode. And more weighty character moments that really hit home for me. So, hell of an episode. I thought that was a little bit better than the first one, just because of a few little things that were done in terms of the direction and putting things together in a cohesive, dramatic package and how it all flowed. As well as there being a bit more substantial character work this time around. That's just a byproduct of me, I guess, slightly preferring the story material for this episode to episode 1. But yeah, so overall, it all added to a slightly better experience for this episode than for episode 1, in my opinion. You guys know that I still liked episode 1 a lot, though, of course. So in terms of the structure, what essentially happened in this episode is that they just finished this volume. They just decided to finish up chapter or volume 29. And what that means is that they just finished all of the chapters within it and nothing past that as far as I know, unless I missed something. Looking back on it now, and lo and behold, I did miss something. I made a very slight mistake here. It turns out there are about 1.5 pages from chapter 119 that they took and then brought back just a little bit earlier to end before the scene of Falco, Gabby, and Colt running. So a tiny bit of a rearrangement there. They adapted about 1.5 pages from chapter 119. So what they did was they had a little bit of 117 left, chapter 117 left to do, and the rest of 118. What they did was they started in 118. They started ahead with the scene with Armin, Mikasa, Jean, and Connie, and they did all that, then came back to sort of the end of 117, finished that off, and then the last scene with Zeke saying that he'll take it from here, that he's come to save Eren. That was the last page of chapter 117. Then the rest of the episode happened pretty much in sequence, 1-to-1 for 118. So a little bit of rearranging and shuffling around in the beginning, but then after the opening, things were pretty much 1-to-1. So roughly about a chapter was adapted for this episode, more or less. And that does seem like not too much. It did feel as if they were using a bit of the recap to pad things out a little bit because they really seemed to want to end right where they did. So yeah, there was a fair bit of padding with the recap. I wasn't a big fan of that. I counted, and there was roughly more or less 2 minutes and 30 seconds of recap, and that's not good. I don't think that's really good. That's a sizable chunk of what is a 23 to 24 minute episode, which also has 3 minutes gone because of the opening and ending. So they went a bit overboard with the recapping, but you see why they did it. They just wanted to end things at this very certain point. With Falco, Gabby, and Colt running towards Eren and Zeke, who are very close, everything surrounding them going off, just all hell breaking loose. They really wanted to end right there. So I understand the sentiment. And honestly, like I said in the episode, in the end, the execution was really good, so it didn't bother me much at all. I'll get into this a little bit more when I actually discuss the content, but they really took that material that we had already seen and kind of redid it in a more poetic, flowing, sort of lyrical way, adding a new context and tonal twist to it, which I really liked. It was sort of like a recontextualization for some of those scenes in terms of, I guess, tonal complexion. So yeah, that was the structure. I suppose we might as well just get into the episode proper. Like I said, great episode. Like I said, a bit more weighty character work, whereas the first episode had a lot of maneuvering to get characters into position, lots of very intimate action, like intimate fist fighting between the Titans, very personal up close. This one had lots of action as well, but it was much more grandiose. It was much more epic in scale, where the first episode was very sort of intimate and close up on these fights, lots of hand-to-hand combat. These ones were on a much grander scale. It was the full scale of Shiganshina, the sky, everything, Zeke just chucking the rocks everywhere, the guns from Peak, and of course Peak used her gun with Magath in episode 1, but I'm just saying the general complexion of the action had a bit of a different spin to it. Hopefully you understand what I mean. The visuals were still just as great, just as sharp, but because there was more of a focus on these more grand sweeping set pieces, like for instance, I'll give a couple of examples. There's all the blimps falling down from the sky as Yelena just looks at it falling down. There's Zeke just chucking rocks all over Shiganshina. The other side of the wall, there's Peak with Magath and everything that's going on there. There are Armin, Mikasa, Connie, Jean, everything that's going on with them on the roofs. And there's Gabby and Falco's perspective with Colt as well from the streets. So many different perspectives on this conflict, many different moving pieces and many different battles throughout Shiganshina. Whereas last episode, it was primarily Eren versus Reiner and Porco, with Magath and Peak doing a little bit in the episode as well. But now, because there was such focus on these grand sweeping shots, lots of wider shots, in terms of the art direction, there was a lot of focus on really enriching these shots with interesting compositions visually, using a lot of the buildings and roofs throughout Shiganshina and the verticality on the walls as well to just give us some interesting shots to look at. There was a lot more variability in these shots. You could see ones from Eren looking up at Zeke at the wall, ones from Zeke looking across the wall. You have them on the street through the different alleyways of Shiganshina. And I mentioned this in the stream for the discussion of episode 1, not as much in the reaction video and discussion video, but one complaint I had with episode 1 of the final season part 2, 4x17, is that the battles got a bit bland in terms of the color palette. It was very yellow and dull brown throughout the entire thing. It wasn't a huge complaint or criticism, it just got a bit tiring to look at. However, this episode, I thought, varied that up quite nicely. It wasn't a huge stark contrast. It wasn't a complete change in color palette or tone. But because of all the explosions that went on in the sky and on the ground in the houses, all the fire, and just the general fog and mire and death and battles, a lot of that had started to settle, leading to a darker palette. There's lots of oranges, dark reds, there's some black tinges, and it just made it so that the battle was a lot darker, which made it not as samey as episode 1. It wasn't just yellow and dull brown. There was quite a bit of variability to it. Now again, I'm not saying it was super out there and bold and abstract visually, but it was a nice change. Perhaps there was a bit of the day progressing because it was darker. As well, there was just the backdrop of all this chaos and all these fires. It just made it visually more pleasing to look at. There were a few nice shots throughout of fire being a backdrop, some nice reds and oranges. So I liked that they added that to the palette, and hopefully they continue to be more visually creative with that. And then so something I kind of hinted at, with this increased approach on wider shots and getting lots of things in these compositions and layouts, I thought the art direction was great. The buildings, the detail, the texturing everywhere, the effects. There were just lots of very interesting looking shots that were complemented by great background art. So just props for that as well. I thought it was visually pleasing on multiple levels. And as well, there were little bits added that were not from the manga that were used to do some visual storytelling that I really enjoyed. I'll get into that when we sort of progress through the episode chronologically, but just great creativity in the direction overall. And one more thing is that the music placement here was consistently great. There were some repeats, for sure. There was another Ashes on the Fire implementation, which, we've heard it quite a few times by now, but I think it was done quite well. I was okay with it, despite it not being a super unique track, because just songs used throughout were so spot on. The songs just fit the mood very well on every occasion. It accentuated the weight and tone and emotions and just really hammered home what we're supposed to be feeling. I thought the music was spot on. I guess I'll go through them as I go through the scenes, but just overall, the music direction here was really great. The audio direction, rather. So, getting into the episode proper now. We start off, again, with Connie, Jean, Mikasa, and Armin, and just want to draw a little bit of attention to a nice Jean moment. Eren has lots of dynamics throughout the series that take center stage. Eren and Zeke, Eren and Mikasa, Eren and Armin, Eren and Reiner. All of these are sort of very prominent in the story, and like I said, they take center stage. They're some of the most prominent dynamics throughout the entire series, and understandably so. They're all great relationships. But Eren and Jean has always been a really endearing one to me. Just the way they developed and grew up together and sort of found this friendly rivalry and camaraderie. I just think back to that scene with them on the train and how Eren says, "I want you all to live long lives." Who could have imagined him saying that about Jean in the first few episodes, right? And Jean reciprocates that affection through his blush in that scene. I think it was maybe season 4, episode 10. Could be wrong, but somewhere around there. What I'm trying to say is they've always had this, they've always butted heads. Jean's been jealous. He had an initial crush on Mikasa. He's had a bit of an inferiority complex early on. He's had reservations about Eren carrying all the hopes of him, seemingly humanity, the people he loves, and he's harbored resentment just generally because he's a human being. He's a child soldier. He's going to experience these sorts of things. Everyone has these sorts of human qualities to them, and it's very natural for him to feel things like this towards someone like Eren. But in spite of that, he's grown to respect him and care for him and think of him as a close friend and comrade. And with that in mind, there was a really nice scene in this episode right in the beginning where he says, "I've known since the beginning Eren was trouble. He'd lead us all into hell. He's always been like this. I knew it. I clocked it from the beginning, but that asshole, I don't want him to die yet. I still care for him, regardless." And that was just a nice encapsulation of their relationship that I just wanted to draw attention to. Connie has a nice line as well, like, he breaks down those walls that I talked about in the discussion, and he allows himself to hope just a little bit here and says, "You know what, yeah, let's do this. I don't want him to die before I can punch him in the face," right? So just overall a very nice scene, and then they all go, the four of them, very determined, going up the steps. That staircase went on forever, by the way. And then that leads into the scene where Zeke enters the fray. But what I want to talk about is the interrelationship between those two scenes and how they flow into one another, primarily through the music. The song was so beautiful. It was a remix of what I think is the Jaegerists theme, but it starts off with this very almost Celtic. I'm probably way off by saying that. I would have to go back and hear it again to be more accurate, so apologies if I'm way off. But just a very mournful, very sad, solemn, but very unique and striking, consistent tone in this song. And as it swells and swells, the emotions really get wrung out of the scene as you see what these characters are doing and what they're trying to do to save their best friend, their dear friend. And then it interlaces with, again, what Magath says about Halos, all the carnage, all the death happening on the battlefield. it just really captures the moment of everything that's at stake here, the emotions at play, the drama, and just everything that's happening really well. It was a great song to put what is happening here, the emotions of it, the mood of it at the forefront. Then Zeke comes in and he says, "Leave everything to your big brother." That is a hell of a line too. That's you can sense he's been wanting to do something like this for a while now, to help out Eren, to achieve his goal with a beloved family member, a beloved brother. And you feel that through what he says here. But anyway, through what those scenes achieved, through interrelating with one another, how they flowed into one another, the new song, the new remix, and how all that sort of melded together, I thought that despite the recap being a bit obnoxious, being 2 minutes and 30 seconds of stuff we had already seen in the previous episode, despite that, I think this put a new spin and mood on that material, and actually I prefer this execution to how it was done in the previous episode, just because of how weighty it was. I really enjoyed it. Also, need to mention that this is the best the Beast Titan has looked in a while. Lots of 2D illustrations. There was some 3D, of course. I didn't really notice if it looked significantly better. It looked a little bit better, but I didn't notice a huge improvement. But in terms of the 2D illustrations, he looked awesome. Tons of detail, tons of complexity, the wrinkles on his face, very expressive, and just the Beast Titan looked awesome. Anyways, we get the opening, and then we start continuing on with the material. Even more chaos now than there was before. Zeke is chucking rocks everywhere, people are dying, explosions everywhere causing the fires in Shiganshina to a greater extent than I talked about before. The blimps are coming down, causing explosions everywhere. It's just, there's hellfire everywhere. It's cataclysmic. Then we have a scene where Peak and Magath, working together, look at what Zeke's doing. He's chucking rocks everywhere, and Peak says, we can't tackle this head on. We need to be a bit more passive. We need to fall back and strategize. So her advice is to take things a little bit calmly, take things step by step, and not rush in. Whereas what I find interesting is that Magath, the seasoned professional, of course Peak has plenty of experience, right? But Magath, the one who is a veteran in every sense of the word, a seasoned veteran who's seen so many battles, in the forefront of his mind, what he's thinking about more than anything is making that traitor pay. Those are his words, paraphrased, but he just feels hurt by what Zeke has done. And I find that really interesting. It's an interesting character moment for Magath. He feels genuinely betrayed by this. He called him a traitor. You can tell it hurts him that this has happened, and he wants to get back at him. He wants to not only stop him, but he wants to... Magath has known Zeke since he was just a wee little boy, right? He brought him up. He was the one who scolded him and told him he didn't have what it takes to be a warrior. And knowing Magath, knowing the layers to him, the sympathetic layers, the compassionate layers, there's a good chance that when he was telling him that, he was indirectly helping him out because he just saw that he wasn't cut out for this and he would suffer just trying to go for it. Or maybe even he just knows how much pain that the warriors go through and just went, you know what, you're better off not getting into any of this. I think there's very much a chance that he indirectly was trying to help him by telling him to back off from the warriors, that he wasn't worthy, etc. Their relationship spans back many years. They've come to know each other so well, and they were comrades. They were, I would say, friends. But now this is the ultimate betrayal in Magath's eyes, carrying out this plan and going behind their back, and essentially he is shooting to kill on all these people he's grown up with. Porco, Peak, Magath, all these Marleyan officials and soldiers, all these people he knows, he is attacking them and shooting to kill for whatever this dream of his is. And Magath just isn't happy about this at all. He takes it very personally. So Magath has always been someone who's been very tactical, very astute, just the model veteran soldier. And I like that this episode and this season in general so far, these first 2 episodes, has us peeling back the layers and seeing that he is very human. He does give in to rage. He is hurt by these sorts of things. He gets a bit headstrong and reckless, and I like seeing that for Magath. So in the chaos, Eren begins moving to Zeke, head wound, leg wound, he's limping, excruciatingly slowly, but he's making progress there. And then we get to the street level. We have Colt and Gabby, and they're just moving throughout the streets, and Colt says, I want to get to Falco. I want to see where he is and save him and see what we can do. And he tells Gabby to get to safety. Gabby says, hell no. Falco is in this position because of my mistakes. He swallowed the wine trying to protect her being knocked out because she was careless with what she said to Nicolo without judging the situation for what it was. He has followed her everywhere, trying to protect her from going on the plane, shooting Sasha, everything that happened as a result of that, going into prison with her, breaking out of prison with her, covering for her as she tried to kill Kaya. Had to look up that name for a second. So Falco has been covering for her time after time after time, just consistently, and she hasn't really taken note of that. She's just been so focused, narrow tunnel visioned on what her goals are, whether it be revenge, finding out the answers, what's going on with Zeke, just so fixated on her rage and what she wants to do instinctually at the time without having broader thinking, broader awareness of what's going on. The awareness that you need in a setting like this, in a conflict like this. And then so in this scene, she says to Colt, you know what, no, I have to help save Falco because he's in this mess because of me. She takes responsibility, and that in itself is a huge signifier of her growth. This was a huge episode for Gabby. She was one of the stars for sure, and we'll get more into why when we get to a later scene, but this was a nice little moment too, her saying that I have to be there to save Falco because this is my responsibility too. For the first time, she's really expressing how grateful she is for what he's done for her. And that's really touching in a way. She's really come around and her eyes have been open to what's been going on. And of course, it's taken a while. It's been slow, but as I'll discuss in a bit, these things do take time. If you're approaching them realistically from a writing standpoint, it's not just you flick a switch and you understand everything right away. It's a very gradual thing. You need tons of evidence, you need tons of events to happen for someone like Gabby to see enough evidence to prove that what she's been learning throughout her whole life is not the case. And it comes to fruition in this episode, and it's wonderful. We then get a scene with all the people who've been poisoned with Zeke's spinal fluid and the wine. So primarily, the main characters here are Pixis, Niall, and Falco. We get a lovely, horrifyingly beautiful scene. Beautiful because it was very well executed in terms of the dialogue and the sentiment, but it's just horrifying as Niall talks about, it's over for him. He's never going to be able to see his family again. He had so much more he wanted to do with his kids, daughters, I believe it was. So much he wanted to say, so many regrets, and it's just your heart goes out to him so much because I can't even begin to conceptualize how horrifying that must be, to know that at any moment you're going to turn into this mindless monster, essentially dead, but trapped at the same time inside this suit of flesh. His life is over, but rather than it being instant and not even knowing what's happening, like being shot in the head or stomped on by a titan, he sees his doom right in front of him. He sees what's going to happen to him. He doesn't know when it will happen, but he knows very likely it will happen soon. And it's just so hard to come to grips with, just seeing your death head on. It is such a dark concept. It's so horrifying, and it's disturbing to think about, and I think it's portrayed really well through Niall's reflection here. Just the sheer emotion of the words he says to Falco. I can't even imagine it. Anyways, they get Armin, Jean, Connie, and Mikasa. They get some of the troops out of prison. They get Shadis. They get Pixis. Pixis sort of rouses the troops, and then they go out on an offensive to fight off the invaders. And then we have a scene where Mikasa is gearing up, her and Luis, the girl who idolizes her, the girl who Mikasa saved right in the beginning of season 1, I think episode 6 it was, maybe, probably. And she says something very interesting. She says to Mikasa, I'm so glad that you, this person I idolize, that I'm able to finally go on a mission with you, that we're fighting for the same cause. And it's funny because that is not what Mikasa wants to do at all. The Jaegerists have this very extreme plan that is going to wipe out a huge chunk of population. And that isn't what Mikasa's doing. A lot of what Mikasa's doing here is just standing up for what's right and trying to save Eren in multiple ways. If he is on this dark path, save him from himself, and if he's at risk of dying, save him from that as well. And then in so doing, stop any possibility of the euthanasia plan, any possibility of a potential rumbling, any of the horrible things they've thought of that may occur. So what Mikasa is essentially doing is very heartfelt, preventative measures, very different from what the Jaegerists and Luis are thinking of. So I find it funny, she just kind of looks at her and goes, yeah, we sure do have the same goals, whatever helps you sleep at night. So it's a very interesting scene there. And then Mikasa takes off her scarf. That's a very important symbolic gesture. The symbol of her relationship with Eren, in some ways the symbol of the way she feels about him and the complexion of her feelings towards Eren, the very soft, sensitive, compassionate feelings she has towards the boy she has always loved, right? The boy that saved her and wrapped the scarf around her and has always been caring. But that side of her that always sees that in him prevents her from seeing the monstrous side, prevents her from seeing the true duality of Eren Yeager. And so she steels herself here. It's a great little bit of subtextual storytelling. She steels herself here, and so what she does by taking off this scarf and going out without it is saying, it's a statement of resolve. She's saying, if it comes to it, if Eren is doing something monstrous, something unspeakable, I may have to stop him, and I'm going to have to look at him for what he is, every part of him, even the unsavory parts, and I'm ready to do that. And by taking off the scarf, taking off that symbol of their relationship and affection, she's looking at things more pragmatically, more with her head, as she should be doing in a situation with stakes this large. So it's a huge moment for her, a divergence of sorts, where she essentially says to herself, I've got to look at things for what they are. I got to stop him if it comes to that. But of course, that is a last resort. If she had her way, Eren would be planning something completely different and she wouldn't have to do anything to combat him or stop him. But you don't really know at this point. There are lots of things up in the air, especially from her point of view. So every eventuality, and this is a great statement of resolve. A statement of resolve as well as being a very sad moment. And then from here, there's another new track. It sounded very Sawano-esque as the core four ascend the steps leading out into Shiganshina. Very determined. You see close-ups of each of them as they're walking up with this music playing. It's just a really nice little scene there as they prepare to do this extremely difficult thing, not knowing what they're going to come up against, but resolved to do what they can to save Eren, no matter what that may mean, while in the back of their mind, preparing for every, again, unsavory eventuality. And then we have a scene with Yelena as she just looks up, arms stretched out, almost composing this symphony of destruction as she looks at the blimps falling down, as she looks at it with wide-eyed glee, almost like a childish glee. It's a great little scene to show the sheer joy Yelena has at this destructive spectacle. Now, I've made a video about Yelena a few months back where I explain that I don't actually think Yelena is like a psychopath who takes pride in just seeing things blow up and people die and that sort of thing. I think that the sort of crazed, twisted smiles on her face as she sees this happening is her taking joy in seeing this byproduct, this evidence of her plan coming to fruition. All this destruction happening means that what Zeke and Eren put together is going according to plan. And in seeing this, she takes immense joy in it because she sees that this moment in history, this moment where the two brothers will change the world forever, is upon them. It is really happening. And that, I think, is where she finds the most gratification and fulfillment from. Not just explosions and things like that. I think there's an extra layer of depth to it. Yelena has always been someone who hated this world, completely disillusioned with it before she meets Zeke. But Zeke shows her the possibilities of a world far removed from all of this, a world of prosperity, of progression away from all of this pain, through the euthanasia plan that she sees such value in. And so she really relishes this moment in history where the tide shifts and suddenly Eldians will become extinct for the betterment of the world. Extinct eventually, of course. They don't just die off immediately according to what this plan will be, but you get my meaning. Yelena, just like many other characters in the story, despite being quite distinct from them, really just wants the world to change in a way that, in her opinion, would better suit peace, essentially. And her drive for this is so fervent, so passionate, that every step towards it really gives her gratification. It just so happens that every step towards it is also destructive. Now, I'm not saying that she takes no pleasure whatsoever in seeing these sorts of things, but I just think that it's secondary in comparison to what she really values, and that is that these things happening are evidence that their plan is coming to fruition. And she really, really takes pride and joy in that. There are just great shots of her throughout, 3 or 4 of them. She's a very expressive person. Her arms are very long, her long frame. She gesticulates, her arms outstretched. I love the side profile of her where you can see her hand going up and you can't even see her eyes because the imagination fills in the gaps of what her eyes must look like, right? This fervent, fevered, crazed joy, But yeah, great visuals for presenting Yelena and her complete fervor for this goal. She is such an interesting character and such a great addition to the cast in this late game. And then her face to Armin, that was interesting. I was wondering about how they would execute that in the anime. They made her somehow even more terrifying here than she was in the manga. They really went all out with making that face extremely disturbing and ugly. Yelena is quite a good-looking woman. She's an attractive woman, but not in that frame. I've had a couple of people ask me how I interpret that scene, because it is a bit bizarre. It's a bit, just jarring, right? What I think that is just an intentional play at humor. It's almost like seeing things from the perspective of Armin, Mikasa, Jean, and Connie, seeing this hugely dualistically dark, threatening aura of this huge woman who towers over them. Because the truth is that she seems to very much believe that Armin is buying into their plan and a supporter of it, and there are always tears in her eyes when she talks about this. So she seems to appreciate this side of it, and she seems to buy into it. But I think that shot of that really terrifying face is kind of an exaggerated scene played for humor from the perspectives of them in a world where she genuinely suspects what Armin really thinks. So I just think that's a bit of an exaggerated play for humor sort of thing. That's what I've always thought about it. Then we continue in the street with Colt, Gabby, Niall, and Falco, as the latter two are let out. Sorry, just a note of the music again. I really liked how they used the Beast Titan theme for Zeke's introduction, and then again, the continuation of the Beast Titan theme as he started raining hell upon Shiganshina. Just forgot to mention that for the Zeke section earlier on. Sorry about jumbling things up. So sorry, getting back to what I was saying, Falco in the street sees his brother and Gabby, and he tells Niall, I see these people, these loved ones of mine. And Niall does something very admirable. He brings them to them, this person who's a prisoner of war. He completely ignores his orders, and he just lets him be with his loved ones in what could be potentially Falco's last moments as a human being. He does the right thing here, and I think it's very admirable for a few reasons. Now, you might say, Niall was gonna die, he had accepted his death, and it's not very admirable because, at that point, what does he have to lose? But then, at the same time, from that very same perspective, he has every reason, knowing that he's gonna die, to just not care, to just sell out Colton and Gabby or something like that. But he doesn't, and I think that says a lot about him. Niall has been flawed throughout this series, particularly in a lot of his interactions with Erwin, where he didn't buy into a lot of the things he said. He's had to learn and mature and gain that perspective that a lot of the characters gain. But Niall does something very admirable in letting Falco be reunited with his brother and the person he loves. I believe that when people are pushed to the absolute brink, very close to death, when the jig is pretty much up and they're confronted with the end of their life, more or less, they're confronted with mortal peril, as Niall is here, I think that those situations reveal most about character. What do you do in situations where you're about to die, potentially? It just strips you bare. It just strips you bare and exposes to the world who you really are, your actions in these sorts of moments. And what does Niall do? He does something very admirable, and he does the right thing. He does something very compassionate, and he transcends these societal, hierarchical, stereotypical boundaries, these boundaries that have been between Eldian and Marleyan people for generations, and he allows Falco to go with Gabby and Colt. This short but very sweet relationship between Niall and Falco is a great example of Eldian Marleyan relationships working out, transcending that boundary. We have it with Nicolo and a lot of our protagonists, and we have it again here. It's just another example of the fact mutual understanding, connection, compassion, and overall love is, in the end, the key to transcending these boundaries and stopping this cyclical hell. Throughout the series, we've constantly seen this. We see it, like I said, with Nicolo and Sasha and our protagonists. We see it here. We see it with Kenny and Uri, two people who are almost fated, given their contextual situations, to go against each other, to go at arms, but who end up being the best of friends. It is consistently friendship and love and connection and affection and understanding and empathy that always stops this violence, that always saves the day and stops these cycles dead. And Attack on Titan has sprinkled this throughout, showing us that who knows what will come of this war. But there was always hope that this sort of love, this sort of connection and understanding will be able to save things. maybe it's foolish, right? But there is always that hope, and it's not completely impossible to hope for these things because we see evidence for it throughout. Attack on Titan has always and continues to be an extremely empathetic story, an extreme advocate of love and connection, and no matter what the boundaries are. And I love that about it. It's such an empowering message in contrast to the war and death and darkness of this story, but it's very prominent, and I love that about it. So then from there, we follow into the scene with Gabby, Colts, and Falco inside that house, just sort of waiting out the onslaught that's happening outside and sort of planning what to do next, and catching up a little bit as well. And this is a wonderful, wonderful scene for Gabby. It is one of my favorite scenes for her in the series so far, as she sees the family that's taken her in, the family that is so empathetic and kind to her and caring, Sasha's family. And she just feels immense guilt and regret and gratitude, and it all mixes in together to this great scene of her tearing up as she hears them wondering about them. I hope Ben and Mia are okay, I really hope they're doing well. And they're concerned for them. And she wonders, it's crazy to her because knowing that she killed their daughter, she's the one who killed them, she can't conceptualize how they could possibly forgive her. Not even just forgive her, but not want to kill her, because she's just been born and bred in blood. The way she saw the world, if someone is killed, you want to take revenge on them, you want retribution. This kindness is so out of her element, and it's just such a huge learning curve for her. It's such a shock that people live this way. And so this isn't a completely new concept. She was introduced to it in, I think, season 4, episode 11. But here is where it's really manifesting in pure understanding of what all of this is. There are people out there who aren't devils. There are people out here who are caring, who are nice people. The people that you've been learning your entire life that are devils who want to destroy you are just like you. They're all the same. Reiner was right. She finally voices it. It's such a gratifying moment because everything she's been learning over the past few episodes when she came to Paradis, it finally comes to the forefront. She finally clocks it, and it all clicks for her. Like I said, for someone who's been indoctrinated her whole life, it's not going to click immediately. She's going to have struggles. She's going to want to attack someone like Kaya because she's distrusting. She's not going to trust Sasha's parents right away. She's going to think that they want to kill her. She's going to just think that death and murder and revenge is the answer to everything because that's what she's learned. But here is where she finally turns her corner. Gabby gets quite a bit of a hard time in the community, and I understand hating her because you love Sasha. She killed a beloved character, and you can't really control your emotions. If you love Sasha, it's very natural to feel dislike towards Gabby for killing her. But in a story like this, you are challenged to exercise a sort of perspective. And so people who do that and pick up what Isayama is putting down with regards to Gabby will definitely be rewarded to the nth degree with gratifying scenes like this, gratifying payoff like this. How crazy is it to see Gabby come to these realizations finally? She gets a ton of grief, and I understand why she does, but at the same time, like I said, this story entices you to exercise perspective. She's a child soldier who's been indoctrinated and brainwashed her entire life to think a certain way. It is so hard to undo that sort of indoctrination and not only just undo it, but relearn the entire world, the entire way you view the world. It's hard, you can't put it into words properly, just how difficult that is. And yet, eventually she's able to do it. And yes, it took her a little bit, but I think there's much more value in the fact that she was able to do it than the fact that it took her a while. Yes, she has done bad things. Yes, there are things she can't take back, but now she is in a position to understand what the world is, the world that Reiner sees, and make strides to put things right as best she can, and carve out a place for herself in this world and a place in this world for her loved ones, and try to contribute to progressing the world in the way it needs to be. Which I think now she fully buys into the concept that they need to stop this continuous farce between LDN and Marley. It needs to stop, it needs to end. And she realizes this now, and it's so great. It was such a great scene. The voice acting, the general tone was wonderful. I felt proud of her here. And a great touch that I alluded to earlier is that they enter this house and it's full of these empty cages, like bird cages or pet cages. This is just a warehouse full of all sorts of cages everywhere. This was not in the manga. I double-checked the volume. There are no cages whatsoever in the manga. So this was an anime-only edition for some visual storytelling, and it worked wonders. I thought it was a great little touch. There are lots of ways you can take these interpretations, but a lot of what I got from it was, as Gabby is fully understanding and fully voicing what she's learned, she has learned that there are confines and cages that everyone is born into. Everyone has these cages. She thought that maybe she was the only one, just her and her friends were the only one, but this happens everywhere. There are an abundance of cages, just like in this house, all over the world, and there are all sorts of people like her. There are self-imposed cages people place upon themselves. As Falco was talking about blaming himself for a lot of the things that happened. Confines we place upon ourselves that prevent us from outstretching our wings and taking to the sky and fully living a fulfilling life. There are cages of perspective, ways in which you yourself limit your own exposure to what the world really is, and limit your viewpoints in the way that Gabby was limited, right? She was limited because of the way she saw the world. There are literal cages, the literal walls of Paradis, and the walls in Liberio as well, the walls separating people in the internment camp. There are cages everywhere. People are born into them. People impose them upon themselves. Everyone has their own struggles, and everyone is bound and confined in some sort of way in this setting. But shifts in perspective, but understanding that other people are in these cages as well, is what allows us to transcend them, to break out, to break free and be free and live fulfilling lives. There is the possibility, there is that sliver of hope for these people to live these lives in spite of everything that's happening. And I think that's what's signified through the open cage. We see at least one cage that's focused on with an opening. It's opened. Now, I think that very much alludes to Gabby having had her world expanded, her horizons broadened, and seeing this world for what it is finally. She has unlocked her cage and escaped these confines and sees the way forward. It could also be a representation of maybe what Aaron's doing. He consistently tries to say that he's free. Maybe through doing these acts, through coming into contact with Zeke, whatever he's going to do, maybe that's a sign that he is now free. He is close to transcending his cage. Maybe it's what Zeke is experiencing now that he is finally enacting this plan he's had for forever. There are all sorts of interpretations for these cages, whether they be literal, like I said about how they refer to the characters themselves, or more abstract, like I talked a couple of minutes ago. But either way, adding them into this scene where this person unlocks themselves and frees themselves from their own confines, it was brilliant. These cages are so applicable to so many layers of this series. Is Gabby free for having this epiphany? Is Aaron free? Is Zeke free? Time will tell, but either way, great visual storytelling. And then, like I alluded to, Falco has a bit of a scene too, where he says that he feels immense guilt for having contributed to this by helping Aaron unknowingly. It's a lot for him to shoulder, and eventually afterwards, the realization of what's happening dawns on him, and he just comes out with it and confesses to Gabby. I've loved you. I've always loved you. I could be dying right now, so I want to say this before the end. Gabby immediately, when she realizes what happens, blushes. She has never clocked that Falco has these feelings for her. When everyone around her has, she was oblivious. And so she blushes, and maybe a bit of a hint of a reciprocation of those feelings now that she's confronted with them, confronted with this idea that she has never really thought about. Maybe she realizes that she feels the same way through that blush. But either way, it's a very sweet scene and a very sad scene, because in this moment it seems like a doomed love, a doomed childhood love that will never be able to be carried out. Everything I did was for you. I tried to save you from not being able to live a long life. I tried to become a warrior for you. I want all the good in the world for you, and I love you. It's a wonderful confession, and Gabby's acknowledgement of it, again, beautiful visual storytelling, is to take the band that signifies that he has the serum, Zeke's spinal fluid within him, to take that band, rip it off his arm, slam it into the ground and saying, we're going to fix this. There are multiple meanings to this. Firstly, it's just saying, we will find a way to fix this. You will not become a Titan. You will not be one of these people marked for death, essentially. By taking that off, that's a signifier of, this isn't you. You're going to be fine. We're going to find a way, which is a nice indication of her resolve to save him. But also, it's a reflection of what she used to be like in the opposite way. So it's her character arc doing a full 180 visually, because when they first came to Paradis, a big moment for her in season 4, episode 11, was that Falco was saying, you got to take your armband off. They're going to know who you are, these people. And she refuses to take it off because she has pride in being this good Eldian. She wants to be this good Eldian. This is what she's learned her entire life. This is where she finds self-worth, being this good Eldian. She doesn't want to remove it as a result. But here, she wants to remove this from Falco. She wants to remove these armbands, these signifiers of what you are, these things that divide people, that put them into these sorts of camps and factions that are just so counterproductive to a prosperous society, and that are these things that lead to these conflicts that cause such pain. Before, she tried to keep the armbands on. Now she rips them off. She has officially become sick and tired of these boundaries, these labels, these arbitrary confines that are placed upon them, including this biological confine that has been placed upon Falco, and she just wants to find a way forward to break through it all. And by removing this armband, ripping it off him, throwing it down, that is a signifier of that. Just a great bit of subtextual storytelling again. Colt then proposes the plan. Zeke cares for Falco. What if we tell him that Falco drank the spinal fluid? Maybe he won't scream. Maybe he won't carry out this plan. Now, I think it's been established that Zeke does care for Falco. He's not cold and heartless, and these relationships he made were not fake. Very much in the way that Reiner made these relationships when he was undercover in Paradis, that those relationships weren't fake, Zeke's weren't either. But now, does he value them enough to completely stop his plan if push comes to shove and he really needs to scream to carry out his plan? That remains to be seen. It seems like a bit of wishful thinking on Colt's part, but who knows? Zeke does care for Falco, so we'll see how that plays out. Again, more carnage, more death, more explosions. We see Eren continuing to try with all his might to get closer to Zeke. Again, great illustrations of Zeke. And then Zeke is shot with a sucker punch with the fake out from Peak's Titan body. I love the way this whole scene was presented. The zoom in through the rifle into Mogoth's eye. The actual shot taking out the traps or shoulder of the Beast Titan. I love that shot. Then the shot of the bullet sort of going through Zeke's chest. It's like a flash of light piercing through his chest in the red background. It was just a brilliant contrast, a very bold scene. One of my favorite shots in the whole episode was that scene of inside the Beast Titan when Zeke is shot, and then he just falls off the wall. He is seemingly on the brink of death, but it remains to be seen if he still has some life within him. And if he does, he can still scream. He can still do the thing that will cause all the soldiers with that fluid within them to turn. In the midst of all this, Reiner says something very interesting. He says that as he's watching Eren get closer to Zeke, he says that you're the last person in the world we want to enact this power, which is a nice callback to Season 2, Episode 12, where when he first finds out that Eren has the coordinates, the founder, he says that very exact same line. Nice callback to that. But yeah, the main cliffhanger here, as it ends so suddenly and seemingly abruptly after, again, what seems like a 10-minute episode, is that Zeke can scream at any time. There seems to be some life left within him. Is he going to do it? Is Falco going to get there in time? Who knows, but things are coming to a head for sure, and everything is happening in that section of Shiganshina. Something's going to happen there in the next episode, and we will see next week exactly what. So I think that's everything I wanted to say. I had a lot to say about Gabby, about Falco, about some of the visual storytelling, some of the stuff with Mikasa and the scarf, Yelena, some things with Mogoth and things like that. This was a really nice episode with lots of great character moments scattered throughout as the stakes ramp up, and we continue to see where these characters go, how their character arcs manifest in them changing or holding true to what they've been doing this whole time, just as we continue to learn more about them and what they want out of this conflict and what sides they're on and what their ideologies are. It's just lots of great character work, lots of emotion everywhere as the stakes are just the highest they've ever been. And it was just an awesome episode. Great visually, lots of awesome shots throughout, great use of music, really good execution of all the big, weighty scenes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This season's been off to a really good start. I'm having a blast sharing my thoughts with you guys and reacting to this. Hopefully you're enjoying the reactions as well. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. Again, if you want to discuss these episodes and maybe bring up something that I may not have discussed in previous episodes or previous discussions in these Twitch streams when we talk about the episode that just aired, by all means, go ahead. But without spoiling the manga, those Twitch streams are completely friendly for anime-only watchers, so no spoilers for manga, if you please. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. I appreciate you joining me again. I'll see you guys next week for episode 3, where things promise to be quite explosive. And many thanks for watching.